I saw one year you were going out to the CrossFit Games and you were competing as an individual, and you had your whole tribe with you. You had the wife, you had the kids with you, and I think you had an infant with you, I believe. And a lot of people were like, oh, he's done. Like, he's not going to be able to win. Like, yeah, he's got a kid, but now he's got another kid, and like, I don't see this happening. And you're still able to pull it off. How have you been able to block out the noise to become a 4-time world champion?
I think you just use some of that. Any time anybody tells you can't, you guys know, any competitor knows that's all the motivation you really need is to have somebody tell you that's not, either nobody's done it before or it's not possible. That's the deal. And it's every year is something. I get too old or too many kids now. You have 3 kids. Granted, the kids thing, that's the hardest part. The age thing, doing all right with that right now. I actually feel better than I have probably in the last 3 or 4 years. But the kids, it's just, you don't want to take too much time away from them. And the biggest thing for me, and that's the reason I stepped away as an individual, was when I wasn't training, I was still thinking about training when I was an individual. I was obsessed with it. I woke up every morning. My goal was to be the fittest on earth. It was to win the CrossFit Games every single day. And you have to have that. You have to do that if you want to be a world champion or you want to, excel at what you're doing. And I knew that I didn't want to sacrifice being a dad to have that. So like I can still, on the team, I still compete, still train really hard. But when I'm done training, I'm done training. Like I'm not thinking about what I need to do next. And obviously there's some days where I'm like, oh, I need to get something else in, but it's not as big of a stress as it was when I was an individual. I was a real jerk. There's a lot of things that a lot of family things, a lot of relationship things that kind of got put on the back burner. And some of it you obviously regret, but I mean that's what you have to do to be in that situation, I think.
Are you competing as an individual this year, or is that just an April Fool's joke?
That was an April Fool's joke. Yeah, no, I mean, like I said, being on a team, I can still push and I still have that drive. As an individual, after a couple of years of being individual, you just I feel like I'm still probably close to that fitness level. There's obviously days where I feel like I'm above that fitness level, and there's days where I'm below that fitness level. But to be an individual, you have to have that switch of just like, I'm ready to, I feel like you have to have something to prove. You feel like you have a chip on your shoulder, whatever it is. And you need that. Like if you have 5 guys and they're all the same physical capabilities, but one person has that mental edge, that's how you win. And as an individual, I don't really have that anymore. I'll give anything for my teams and I'll push as hard as I can for the guys and girls next to me. But as an individual, like I said, I don't go to get second or third or for a participation medal. I go to win, and I just don't. That's not where my head's at. If that makes sense.
What if Frazier won a 4th championship?
That's the golden question, but it's just different times. Like he's super fit, obviously, great athlete, and so it's just we're at different points in our careers and different points in our lives for sure.
I just picture like some tumbleweed going in front of you 2 guys, and you guys having an old-fashioned Western.
We'll shoot it up.
Yeah.
What I'm curious, what is it that built you to get into CrossFit? Because you said you started like a little bit after you guys were together, but CrossFit is painful. I did a vanilla CrossFit type workout and I was dead. It was nothing compared to what you do. But what prepared you to be able to handle those types of workouts and deal with that pain day after day?
Yeah, I was actually talking to somebody about this the other day. I think it's just kind of a perfect mix of everything. My parents, growing up, my mom was, her parents were farmers. My dad, didn't live on a farm, but it was always doing something, always working. My parents are in any room are the 2 of the hardest workers in the room. They weren't, we had a lot of chores to do, but they weren't making us do stuff while they were sitting around. Like they were either doing something else or we were all doing the work together. So having them playing sports growing up, high school baseball, a little bit of college baseball. My high school baseball coach was one of my biggest mentors, especially in hard work. And that was just the thing. We ran more than the track team, I felt like, which was completely worthless. We'd go to the weight room. We'd do these like ridiculous circuits that had, and, you know, talking to him now, he's like, yeah, dude, I had no idea what I was doing. I was just trying to, you guys hurt. And so just the mental side of that, the physical, growing up playing football, being outside. I was a firefighter for 4 years. That's actually how I found CrossFit. I was getting my degree in exercise science. One of my professors was like, hey, you should check out CrossFit. A lot of military, police, fire guys do CrossFit. And, when I was at the fire station, if we were just sitting around by about 5 o'clock, you had your free time. It was 24 on, 48 off. But after 5 o'clock, traditional work day, you could, go work out. You could watch TV, hang out. You could actually recline the recliners. We couldn't recline before 5 o'clock. So most of the guys would just hang out. I'd go back to the gym because I had nothing to do and would just go work out for a couple hours. And they'd give me so much crap because I was always back there, but I couldn't sit still that long. And so I think it was just a mix of all of those things, and found CrossFit. And I actually did my first competition, and we were on our way to spring break, and it was like, there's a lot of fit guys. I don't think I'm going to be in the top 20. I had to be in the top 15 to transfer. So I was thinking, well, if I'm not top 20, we'll go ahead and get an early jump on spring break. We'll end up winning my sectional and the kind of the rest there. So, yeah, I think, like I said, it's just a mix of everything. Not one thing that I can really pinpoint that is the answer, but all of that.
In 2010, when you did struggle with that rope climb, was that something that kind of set forth the rest of your career? Do you think that was a moment that kind of needed to happen to get you fired up to start destroying everybody, basically?
Yeah, for sure. I before that, I'd let CrossFit kind of become in the previous months, let CrossFit kind of define who I was as a human being. And, like I said, my faith is a huge part of who I am. And that failure made me realize, hey, that, earthly things aren't what define me as a human being. And it really helped me to kind of disconnect from, for a couple months after the games that year, I didn't want to do any CrossFit. I was just like, man, I gotta get on this. I didn't even want to work out. And so it really helped me kind of back up too. And I was like, hey, why don't you start figuring out how to move better, and not necessarily worry about how much weight, but actually doing stuff correctly, because a lot of CrossFitters, maybe not now as much, but when we were back then, it was like, hey, who cares what it looks like as long as I'm getting it done fast, and now it's like, all right, let's pump the brakes a little bit and, take the barbell down to 195 or 135 and let's move a bar well doing Olympic lifts before we start to, load our spine and do all that type of stuff. And it really helped me overall doing that for sure.
Was that something that did help you to get away from allowing it to define you? Because I've seen it kind of burn a lot of other CrossFitters, and I see it in our sport too, in powerlifting and stuff like that, where the numbers really define you. But how does somebody get away from that?
Man, it's hard. And that was the biggest thing where I think, like I said, with my faith, it was, that's what defines who I am. And anything with CrossFit can be taken away from me, but, that can't really be taken away. And I, for somebody who, faith isn't their thing, I think it's, getting outside of yourself and not letting, it gets so, one thing be who defines you as a human being. Like now, my kids, I know that, I'm a dad first now, and there's, then there's still our days where I let, what happens in the gym or what happens with numbers and all that stuff define me. Like, I'm not saying that doesn't happen, but every day is a new day, and I try to figure out at the end of the day, kind of take a recap and say, all right, I did this well, I did not do this well, what can I do different tomorrow? And it's tough. There are days where I'm like, man, I was a good dad today, and then there's days where I'm like, wow, I was a piece of shit. And so it's tough, and then that's life, I think, and it's as long as you're moving forward and are able to be held accountable and can hold yourself accountable and doing those things that aren't necessarily the easy things to do. That's good.
What about maybe tricking yourself a little bit with your training? Maybe utilizing like the conjugate system, doing something that's different. Let's say particular CrossFit workout calls for some deadlifts and some pull-ups or something like that back and forth. But rather than doing the actual protocol, maybe you deadlift and you have some chains on the bar, and maybe when you go to do your pull-ups, you're doing a pull-up on a fatter bar or something like that. Have you done things like that, thrown yourself kind of a curveball so that you're not getting too attached to the actual numbers and the actual score, maybe potentially making the workout a little bit harder, or maybe making the workout even a little bit easier?
Yeah, I rarely do benchmark workouts, honestly. I do a lot of variations of benchmark workouts. Like just an example, the other day, one of the first workouts I competed in was called Amanda, and it's just 975 muscle ups and squat snatch at 135. Well, a couple of weeks ago, it was 3-2-1 legless rope climbs with 975 squat snatch. So we'll do a lot of stuff like that where it's similar time domain, similar stimulus, but it's a completely different movement. But yeah, it's kind of the beauty of what we do is you can kind of change that stuff as much as you want. But like I said, I really don't do a ton of the benchmark straight CrossFit.com benchmark workouts. We use those as kind of a template. And then another thing that we've actually started doing is it's tough, because intensity is a huge key in what we do, and CrossFit, preaches intensity and all that stuff. One thing that I've started doing is adding some actual interval metcons into. So we'll do that 975 with 3-2-1 legless, but we did it 3 times. And so you rested till 10, almost complete rest, and go again. And so, because that's one of the things with CrossFit, a lot of people are like, you only did a 2-minute workout today. And so, how are you going to get better at a mile? You're not going to just run a mile. You're going to do it, in different variations and a couple different times. So that's kind of something that I've learned it's kind of crazy to think back. I've been doing CrossFit going on 10 years.